speak like a variety of different languages because what we didn't know until we got to this like lockbox holdup area where you keep all the confiscated shit is that Tiny is some kind of fucking bounty hunter himself, right? Like we get there and what actually he's looking for, what we find out is he's looking for a goddamn necklace full of lightsabers that he's collected from Jedi he's killed. And he's a Force adept. And he flings the fucking lightsabers over to him, and he puts his necklace on, and he, like, takes two of them out, and he lights those fuckers up, and now we're in a fight, right? Because it's a trap, you see. And by the way, there are, like, fucking stormtroopers on their way, too. Because the whole thing is a trap from the fucking start. And by the way, he's not called Tiny because he's fucking tiny. He's smaller compared to the other Hutts because he doesn't have fucking flubber. Like, he's not fat like the other Hutts. This dude is like the Vin Diesel of the Hutt world. Like, he's jacked. Okay? And so he's attacking us just like with just the fury of his entire fucking Hutt race. I mean, just going beast mode on us with these fucking sabers and shit, right? And so we gotta defend ourselves and shit, and it's a hellacious fight that ends up really bad for Tiny. Like we fuck him up pretty good. Like we cut his robot spider legs out from under him and shit, right? And then like slice him along the side. There's like blood and gore everywhere. His innards are coming out and shit. And like once we slice him along his side, there's a part where I had gotten behind him after cutting one of his like spider legs off, where I got to cut his tail off and shit like that. Like literally I think the reason why this guy had gotten so many other, like, Jedi sabers, right? Because he had, like 7 of these things on him, right? On this necklace of his. And I think the reason why he got so many is because, like, he was strong, and, like, he would go crazy. He'd just, right? Like, and maybe he'd take them by surprise because you don't expect a Hutt to be whipping out lightsabers, right? And you don't expect a Hutt to be hunting down Jedi. But once we got underneath him and started cutting his legs out from under him and shit, like it went downhill for him real quick. Like it got bloody real fast, and like at one point he like. When we cut him along his side and his innards started spewing out. Well, that was it. And he did this like flop thing, right, onto his side. But when he did, he had like one of the lightsabers bent to the side of his face. And so he landed on a lightsaber, and just like the back to side of his head just explodes out of his skull. It's like, holy shit. So, yeah. Once we got the upper hand on Tiny, he didn't last too long, but before then, he was going pretty beast mode on us. Like, straight up. And then, of course, we had to contend with stormtroopers and shit, but, we're Jedi, so we did manage to escape. But yeah, it was a very fun campaign, all things considered. There was a point in time where we did meet one of the Sith assassins. Terry called them the Sith Assassin 7, right? After, well, clearly you know what after. But I guess they're supposed to be like the twisted version of the Samurai 7, right? Or something like that. One of them was definitely very samurai-like. And it was kind of explained to us that 6 out of the 7 have like apprentices of their own, right? But the seventh one, the one we met, I guess they're not really in any order, but like to more easily explain it, the one that we met doesn't have any apprentices because the one we met, and I don't know if this is an actual like power or something, but like the one we met generated like an anti-force like power that like encompassed miles around him, like, and basically it nullified powers of the Force around him. So I guess there's no point in training an apprentice in the ways of the dark side of the Force if you can't use it yourself, or they can't use it anywhere around you. But he still would whip out these fucking, like, sabers, and he had two of them, like, on his side, and he'd whip out one, like, Sitachi from, well, Sitachi, and then the other one he'd have normally, and, we found out that he had these gloves that he'd like turn on, right? He had buttons on his gloves, and he'd turn them on like and we found out they were like magnets hooked in, like each glove would have like a magnet in it hooked into a special like magnet sensor thing in like his saber. So it would forego the need for him to use force powers to get his saber back if he, like, had lost it. And, like, what he would do is he'd take, like, his fucking, like, index finger and he'd just bend it down like this. And that would activate the magnet in that particular lightsaber and it'd fling back to him. And he had... he didn't have, like, dual lightsabers, that came out on both sides that looked like that. But they were comparatively shorter, but what they were he'd be able to like click a button on his lightsaber and either he'd direct the beam in one side or the other, right? He couldn't have them on both at the same time, but it was just so that he could have a better like defense, so to speak. And this guy completely armored up, right? And he's got, like, one of those SR masks and shit, like, old school with, like, the goggles and, like, the breather piece, right? The ones that completely cover the face from back in the old days. And, except the breather part of, like, the gas mask, the old school gas mask he had, like, two other breather apparatuses attached to that. And then they had hoses attached to the back of his neck. And on the top of his head, connected to, like, his mask, was, like, this big, like, mushroom dome thing, right? It was very much, like, it was made out of metal, but it was very much, like, provocative of, the old school samurai movies where you'd see the lone Ronin warrior walking down the street with the saucer straw hat, right? Except it was more mushroom shaped and shit. And it just, dude looked crazy. And even though he didn't have force powers, he knew how to work that shit. I mean, we didn't really fight him because he was too powerful for us at the moment, right? Because we're still like starting out, right? But there was a current bad guy that we were going up against on this one planet while we were hunting for other Jedi, and she was doing her best to try and impress upon the Emperor, and she ended up going to blows with him, and we got to see what he was capable